So while you're taking the poll, I want you to think about maybe what your mom and what your dad's ears look like. And just like we did last time, do your ears look like your mom and your dad's, or are they much different? Do you look like one? Do you look like the other? Do you look like both? So in the chat, if you look like one of your parents, mom or dad, put 1. If you look like both your parents, put 2. And if you look like neither, and if you don't know, just kind of guess. You may not have looked at your mom's ears recently. Lots of 1s and 2s. How could you be 0? Nobody's put 0, but somebody could be 0. How can that be? Don't you get your ears from your parents? You watch the Maury Povich show, and the guys get on there and say, look at that nose, that's not my nose, those aren't my eyes, those aren't my ears. So, shouldn't it look like your parents? It doesn't have to. Why doesn't it have to? It's something we talked about last class. Kind of. It has more to do with recessive genes. You guys remember what recessive was? Recessive means that the only time they show up is when there's 2 of them. So if you have a recessive gene, you could pass it on to your baby, but you may not show it. Right? You may have that gene, but a dominant gene takes over. And that's kind of where we're headed today. So, what we want to look at. This isn't the reason I picked this one, the earlobes, is because that's another Mendelian trait. 1 gene, 1 trait. So, if you decide you're going to have a baby, you can look at the father, and you can possibly, or the mother, and you can possibly tell what your baby's ears are going to look like. That's another one of those traits you can do: freckles and earlobes and hairline. Okay. So what I want to look at is we have a couple words that we're going to try to focus on. And the words we're going to focus on are these 6. Homozygous, heterozygous, genotype, phenotype, dominant, and recessive. So some of those we've talked about. Dominant and recessive, those are definitely words that we've talked about in the last lesson. And dominant describes an allele. It describes one of the traits. And dominant shows up whenever it's present. Like if you have 1 dominant gene or 2 dominant genes, dominant shows up all the time. The only time a recessive gene shows up is when you have 2 of them. The words we kind of talked about last lesson, but really didn't use the words a lot, were phenotype and genotype. Phenotype is what it looks like. So if I'm looking at you guys and I see brown hair, and black hair, and brown hair, that's your phenotype. That's something I can see. Brown eyes, blue eyes. I can see that. So that's the phenotype. The genotype I can't see. I can't tell whether you have a red gene and a black gene, or a blonde gene and a brown gene. I can't see that. That's the type of genes you have. That's what your parents passed on to you. So that would be like the letters. And then heterozygous and homozygous talk about the genotype, and they describe what it is. Homozygous means there's 2 of the exact same alleles, right? So if I'm looking at it, that'd be like capital T and capital T, or lowercase t and lowercase t, or little b and little b. They're 2 of the same, right? Homo means same. And then heterozygous means they're 2 different ones. That's like big T, little t, or big S, little s, or big B, little b. So homozygous, 2 of the same alleles, right? And here's your examples: big H, big P, big T, big T. Heterozygous is 2 different alleles. It's when you have a capital and a lowercase: big H, little p, or big T and little t. So to talk about heterozygous, homozygous, you're talking about the genotype. You talk about the alleles that you have. And then phenotype is the trait that's displayed. Whatever you look at, whatever you see, is going to be your phenotype. Genotype is the type of alleles, right? The letters that you have. Dominant is the allele expressed when it's present. That means two uppercase or an uppercase and a lowercase. The dominant gene shows up, whatever that trait is. And then recessive only when two of those are present. So what I want to do before we go on to SpongeBob is I want to try to use some of those words so we get some practice. So what I have is I have the slides from the other day that we went through when we first started the tutorial. And I have some different stickies. I'm going to give you guys access to this, and what I need you to do is I need you to take the sticky notes and move them over whenever you find it. If you see a genotype, you're going to grab genotype and put it next to it. If you see a dominant allele, you're going to grab a sticky and put it next to it. If you see something that's homozygous, you're going to just drag the sticky to where it is. Okay? So y'all have access. You guys are going to do this. You guys are being shy. Well, I know what dominant is. I can definitely I see dominant there. Grab that sticky and slide it over. Yes. Right? That's a capital G. If it's a capital letter, it's dominant. So I know what recessive is too then. Right? If G is the dominant one, little g is the recessive one. Awesome. Now these are kind of the new words. The homozygous and the heterozygous. I think you're going to need to pull that one up towards the parents. Yeah, your homozygous, I think you need to go over to this area over here, and you're going to want to label something over here. Because homozygous has to be two, and they have to be the same. They both have to be capitals, they both have to be lowercase. So I don't think we have homozygous on this one. We do have heterozygous. We have two different, we have a capital and a lowercase. So you got to find pairs of letters. You want to put this one right over there. Because these are two different letters, right? This is heterozygous because you have a capital and a lowercase. Phenotype. Phenotype is when what does it look like? I don't see anything on that slide that says green or tall or short or wrinkled or I don't see any of those kinds of things. So I don't think there's a phenotype on this slide. And there's not homozygous. That one's not on here either because these two are different. So those are heterozygous. There is genotype on there. And actually it's already labeled. So it's not as challenging as you would think. Yeah, those are their genotypes. All right, it's talking about what genes they have. All right, so let's try another one. It gets easier. As you see it being done, it's easier the next time. So I would start with the easy ones. I would look at dominant and recessive. Yeah, the capital G is dominant. The little g's are recessive. See, it's definitely getting easier. Now you have pairs of letters down for the babies. Are they heterozygous or are they homozygous? Hetero. Is that the same or is that different? That is different. So you got to find two letters side by side that's one's capital and one's lowercase. And then homozygous is there. Right, two of the same, little g, or you could have put it over here, big G, big G. And these are all genotypes. Phenotype is what it looks like. This one doesn't tell you what it looks like, but these are all the genotypes, the kind of genes that it has. Right, so this is recessive, this is dominant, dominant, recessive, dominant, recessive, dominant, dominant, recessive. Let me use my pointer so you can see it better online. Recessive, dominant, 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 recessive. This is a genotype. This is a genotype. That's a genotype. That's a genotype. This one is homozygous, heterozygous, heterozygous, homozygous. Okay, so you're fast on that one. See how much faster you can get on this one. And this one you can use all of your words. They're all on there somewhere. Yep, those are two dominant, those are two recessives. Good. Right, so those two sentences are talking about the phenotypes. One's green, one's yellow. That's good. Awesome. Big G, little g is heterozygous. Right, all four of those are talking about the babies, and that's talking about what kind of genes they have. Good. And that one's homozygous. Killed it. It's getting easier. The words are starting to make more sense. I think I have one more. And this one you can use, you can use all your words somewhere. You can't use them all on the babies. You have to go over to the parents for some of them. Good. Little r is recessive. Good. Big R's are dominant. Mom has little r, so she's recessive. Good. Good. The phenotype is round and wrinkled. That's right. Genotypes are the type of genes. Awesome. You just have to find something that is heterozygous. You can put dominant next to that big R. Okay. Yes, that is heterozygous too. Yes. So if you're talking about that as a pair, mom, little r, yeah, just not one of them. Right? It has to be two to be homozygous because they have to be two of the same. So if you're talking little r, that is a homozygous pair. Or big R, that's a homozygous pair. So it looks like you're good with those letters. Oh yeah, Michaela, you're right. I'm sorry. Did not see that. I'm looking at too many things all at the same time. Not paying attention to any enough. Okay, so what I have is I have a way for you guys to check how close you're coming. So this is a Google form that you're going to take your answers from your Punnett Square practice and you're going to put them on. I'm not using this as a summative grade. I'm using this as formative. It's not going to be a grade. What it'll do is it'll help us identify like where we're messing up. So what you're going to do is you're going to come to your Punnett Square practice, and the questions down here, right, we'll color the parents and we'll color the children, are going to be the questions that are right here. So this is number 1, question D, what are the parents? So I'm going to look at that. My choices are, okay, I have father's purple, mother's purple, so I'm going to click off both purple. Then the next question is number 1, and it says flower color. What is the color of the children? So I have all 4 offspring are purple. So all purple. Okay, and you just put your answers in there for the first 10. And what it'll do is when you submit it, it'll tell you how many you got right. That way you know where you need to ask your questions. It'll tell you which ones were wrong, which ones were right. And as you go through, you can, before I send you off to work on SpongeBob genetics, you can get all your questions answered and we'll be ready to go. This is just to make sure you know what you're doing, not to give you a grade. Okay? So take a few minutes, put those in, and I'll be watching for your scores to see if there's certain things. Like last class, they needed to talk about the phenotypes of the children, is where they were struggling. So this helped us figure out what you're missing. Oh, did I not give you that? And then where you're getting the answers from is the one you did the other day, the Punnett square practice sheet. So you did this, and you may have submitted it. I haven't graded them because I'm not doing until. So we're right here. C shape. So it says that capital R is dominant, and that means round. And then wrinkled is recessive, and that's a little r. So if I look at a baby, it has a big R and a little r. Dominant's there, it shows up, it's round. Dominant is here, it shows up, it's round. Dominant is here, it shows up, it's round. Dominant here, it shows up, it's round. The only one that would not be round is right down here, where the mother, because she has two lowercase. So the only time you see the recessive trait is when you have two lowercase letters. So mom is going to be wrinkled, and everything else, dad and all 4 kids are going to be round. As soon as you put your answers in and find out that you know what you're doing and you don't have any questions, you can open up your SpongeBob genetics, and they're going to ask about the words we just talked about. Like the first one, they want to know if it's heterozygous or homozygous, and all you did is put HE or HO. They are going to have some where you have to fill in a Punnett square. Okay, so let's take a look at number 5. So it says that smooth is dominant, big S, and bumpy is recessive, little s. The father is heterozygous, right? He's a big S, so I put that here, and a little s, so I put it here. And the mother is homozygous recessive, right? She has 2 of the same, and they're both recessive, so I put a little s and a little s. When I bring them down and across, that gives me heterozygous baby, homozygous baby, and a homozygous baby. So I'm going to have 2 that look the same. These 2 over here, the little s, little s, little s, little s. Those 2 are going to look the same, and they're going to have the recessive trait, so they're going to be bumpy. And then over here, there's a dominant allele, right, the big S. So these are going to be smooth. This baby and this baby are smooth. This baby and this baby are bumpy. So you put 2 out of 4 are smooth, and 2 out of 4 are bumpy. Okay, so when you are finished with putting this in, go ahead and work your way through the SpongeBob genetics assignment, and do the same thing. If you get stuck on any questions on that, make sure you ask, and we will go over them. Because they ask them a little bit differently than they did on the last assignment.